two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are going to be going on about one of my choices that I put forward as we are doing Disney live-action films from the 70s or 80s. I believe that was the theme. So I put forward Flight of the Navigator, which was directed by Randal Kleiser, filmed in 1986. And it stars definitely a few people. Sarah Jessica Parker in an earlier role, for sure. But we have Joey Kramer, and surprise, Paul Rubens. Except we didn't know him as Paul Rubens in this movie until way afterwards.
Right.
He actually put down his name as Paul Mall at the time. So I wonder if he was trying to hide the fact that he was Pee-wee at the time. But then we have Cliff DeYoung, who has definitely had a somewhat on and off again role on Murder, She Wrote. At one point in time, Veronica Cartwright, and so on and so forth. Howard Heston shows up in here, Robert Small, among other people. So let's see what IMDb said. The writers are Mark H. Baker, Michael Burton, and Phil Jonow. IMDb says, in 1978, a boy travels 8 years into the future and has an adventure with an intelligent, wisecracking alien ship. So, first impressions going around. Jake, was this a first time watch for you?
It was indeed. I definitely have known of this film for a while. I could not say. I have no idea, really, honestly, when I became aware of it. I do know that we've talked about it a lot on this channel. I feel like Mo primarily, although Dave, I think you've brought it up several times too. Mm-hmm. I think the movie's been floated as a possibility so often. I was actually thinking maybe we'd done it already, but watching it, I'm like, yeah, no, I've never seen this before. Or if I did, I might have seen pieces of it when I was younger. I can't swear to it one way or the other. So for all intents, this is a first time watch, and I liked it. I think that there are ways where I can definitely see this being a film where nostalgia could be a huge factor. I guess that's part of the theme of this month, though. Is, I could definitely say the same thing about the Apple Dumpling Gang. It's like, if you grew up with it, you'll probably see it in a totally different light than someone who didn't. I definitely enjoyed it, and I thought it was a good little movie. I have a feeling that I will completely forget it again until the next time I see it. But I could also see how if someone grew up with the movie, how it could be a favorite. You know what I mean? And it was definitely interesting. I'm glad I finally saw it. And on your note about Paul Rubens, just last week we had an early Paul Rubens appearance in a Disney film where I brought up the tidbit that Disney was uncomfortable having Rubens in the cast. And I wonder if they asked him to use a pseudonym or if he himself auditioned under a pseudonym, or I really don't know. I do know that I recognized, not as much before, but after the robot gets its personality shift, I was like, there's no way that's not Paul Rubens. If it isn't Paul Rubens, then it's someone doing a Paul Rubens impersonation.
Yeah, the laugh alone is enough right there.
Yeah. So then I saw in the credits it said Paul Mall, and I'm like, well, that's obviously a fake name. But I find it also very amusing that Pall Mall is a popular cigarette brand. But I'm like, okay, Disney had some interesting standards back in the 80s. But it's, it's good. I'm glad I finally saw it.
Okay. Is that pretty much it then for your first impressions?
Yeah, for now.
Okay. Heading over to you, Tammy. Was this the first time watch for you?
No. We watched it before, but I don't think I saw it besides that. I thought it was fun. I mean, wow, to sit there and that kid, it just blows your mind as to, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but when he wakes up and yeah. So I found it neat, interesting. Because I don't really want to say too much about it till we get into it, but
well,
I like
yeah.
the character.
I'd say it's a flying saucer movie, but I swear to God, it has something to do with time travel too. So
it's not so much a saucer as it is like one of those decorative bath soaps.
But it almost looks like a seashell.
Right. Although they do give you a fake out right at the beginning where you think you're looking at some saucers. Well, I guess they were flying saucers after a fashion.
I mean, I love the beginning where they do that, and then you find out that it's just frisbees that the dogs are catching. So
right.
And the water tower.
Yes. They did some fun fake outs on that.
But yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I liked. What year did this come out, David?
1986.
I like the different types of technology that they showed in it for being 1986. So I thought it was fun. And
the different music that he was introduced to.
Yeah, they didn't play any Twisted Sister.
I know, right? But is that pretty much it for your first impressions then for right now?
Yep.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Brandon. Was this a first time watch for you?
No, might as well have been, because I don't remember a lot of it. I mean, I remember parts, but I know I've watched it before. But it's one of those, you know how it is.
Ran through a lot of Disney movies. It wasn't on your radar for those videos, or were you just doing the animations?
I mean, I've actually watched it before, and I own it. But I mean, I got it mainly for the fact that I wanted to see it again, because this one and the Explorers always run together to me for some reason. I guess it's because similar time periods, and they're both movies about kids, finding spaceships and such. But this one, I remember the Pee Wee Herman talking robot thing. I remember a little bit of it, but as far as the movie, I might as well have been watching a new movie because I only was kind of nostalgically remembering a few pieces of it. So I doubt I've watched it since I was a little kid. I mean, I was 7 when this thing came out, so and I'm not the oldest of us, but still, the majority of us were very small when this came out. And I'll admit, like I say, I know I've seen it, but I'm glad I got to revisit it because it is fun to revisit these things. I mean, these are films that, you know, sometimes you grew up with, but you don't return to for a long time. And yeah, I do agree, though, with Jacob, is that, yes, nostalgia definitely does shape this a bit because I do feel like the pacing of this, I've said this before, I love using pacing for some reason, but the pacing of this is a little bit off.
Okay.
But otherwise, you know, it's a fun movie. It's a real nostalgia fest, and I've enjoyed it a lot revisiting it. So it's fun. I've been looking forward to talking about it. Just like I'm sure if Kim comes on next week, which it's possible. I don't know. She'll be working up until we get started, but I can say that she would have something, some familiarity and some enjoyment from like the last one, for instance.
Okay.
Something wicked this way comes.
Yep.
We always tease the kitty cats at times, you know, they'll be coming out like, oh, something furry this way comes.
Of course, I've never actually seen that one, so believe it or not. So that one I have not seen. So that's going to be interesting when I get to that one. But this one,
that was my childhood one.
So
next week's, that was something from my childhood.
So that'll be fun.
Okay. Is that pretty much it then for your first impressions then for right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My mom used to put a lot of stuff on VHS for us kids, and this was one of them. Yeah, so it was on regular rotation for me, of course. I didn't realize it was Paul Rubin's voice until, in fact, I was an adult. You know, so I just thought the voice of Max was funny, and I think it kind of helped with what happened with Paul Rubin in public for me to be okay with the voice of this, you know, animatronic robot inside of a spaceship to be kosher for me. So, and I know a lot of his public attention came around when I was in grade school. So it was at it was probably at a moment where, you know, I wasn't fully aware of how wrong things were that Rubin did at the time. You know, that kind of shadowed his career for much of the rest of his life. Although a lot of people still, you know, were fans of him.
I mean, he was just caught jerking off. I mean, people have done a lot worse.
There's more to it than that now. I've been told that there's actually something to do with child pornography as well, which that is not okay. Right. But I'm not 100% on that one, so I'm not going to there. But I know that there was something to do with that as well. Now that, no, bad man, don't do.
Well, and we know how Disney is or was at this point in time kosher with working with people who were in trouble or had been in trouble well into the 90s. Powder for being an example. You know,
I mean, all things being considered, I mean, I grew up with Pee Wee Herman. I mean, Pee Wee's Playhouse was timed perfectly for me growing up because I was a kid when that was on the TV. I was watching that one back to back with the Ernest TV series, which only ran for one season, but for some reason it felt like more.
But
And I still have the Pee Wee Herman show, so I mean,
but I think I had a more of an affinity for this movie because the title character, his name is David. So, and they refer to him as Davy, and I've been called Davy before. So I guess when it comes to movies that have my name in it, sometimes I'm attracted to it a little bit more. So, that being said, I enjoyed this movie, and I enjoy it now. I mean, it definitely shows a little bit of the tension of whatever. No matter what happens, whether it be aliens or something like that, the government will always mill around it and be in a nuisance, And I think this caught a little bit of how one situation can, almost entirely become a problem in just a regular family's life. But let's get into the plot here. So I guess you could say it can be a film that can be played around the 4th of July because it starts out on the 4th of July in Florida, of all places. I think it was Fort Lauderdale or whatever.
Right.
And the film begins with a sport of sorts that I guess David and his family are watching this frisbee contest with dogs, and he seems to want to eventually get his dog being a frisbee catching dog. And to be honest, if you're a kid with any kind of a dog or a pet, it's something to aspire to. But you can see that his little brother Jeff is always seeming to argue with him, and not always in a nice way. And so
brother relationship, really.
Yeah. I guess the little brother gets dropped off at a friend's place, and he ends up walking home. And I guess on the walk, the dog hears something and goes up ahead. Dog's name was Bruiser, by the way, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cute name. And his brother Jeff drops down from the trees and scares the bejesus out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he walks a little further. The dog's looking down into a ravine, and he looks over it and then falls. And then when he wakes up, it's 8 years later, and his parents don't even live where, he goes over the tracks, goes to his home, and there is an older couple living where just seconds ago, he knew that he lived there, and he's looking through, he busts through, and I guess he gets upset because he didn't find him. And so the couple calls the cops, and he's ended up at the cop station. So
I'd be upset too. That was a nice house that they had there.
Right.
I mean, they moved. I don't know what happened to the family economically. They must have really hit hard times because they moved from that house to the one they were in. But hey.
Well, didn't you know he was actually the breadwinner for the family? They had him working in that sweatshop all the time.
Hey, say what you will, but I actually had one 10-year-old that not only did their parents' taxes, but brought in all the family income.
Well, as you pointed out before, this takes place in Florida, and all kinds of weird stuff happens down there. So
maybe he was making bath salts.
but
Right.
what do y'all?
I don't know. I kind of like the look of the new house. I like the look of it.
Hmm.
So, that's just me.
That would be disturbing. You're sitting there, you've known this house all your life.
Right.
Now you jump in there and this couple that you don't even know is living there. And you're looking for your parents and like, what the heck, man?
Not to mention, they're like, what's this kid doing? Is he on the drugs?
Maybe he was on the bath salts.
Right.
Well, and I do like the setup that the beginning it gives you. I mean, even the frisbee that he's throwing to Bruiser looks like a silver flying saucer. You know.
Oh yeah, that was on purpose.
That was on purpose. Also, the blimp showing up instead. Everybody's looking up, and
Right.
you think it's a flying saucer that's flying overhead, but it ends up being a Goodyear blimp or something.
You know how you get all these, a lot of times they'll have, chapter titles in movies and whatnot. And I feel like the first part of this movie could be called Red Herrings. You know?
Okay, so as the film progresses, while he's at the police station, they're trying to hunt down where his parents might be, and asking him questions about what happened. And when they come up with the information of, evidently they found a flyer from like 8 years ago that
What was a missing persons report
from 1978,
Right.
and it's 1986 at this moment. So technically he should be 20 years old, which his brother alludes to later once he sees him. But they track down his parents, and his parents are amazed and happy.
Right. Well, one thing that it wasn't. They didn't find the lost flyer. They found that he had been listed as dead at some point, because he'd been missing so long.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something to bear in mind, that his parents had pretty much closed the chapter on that life. So they didn't. They were surprised when the police showed up with him.
Putting it mildly.
So, and of course, once he sees them, he completely collapses in their arms, and then
It's like, what happened to you? He didn't say it, but he's like, "You're old."
Right. So,
yeah, his parents really aged in 8 years.
Well, I could see why. They lost their son. They lost that palatial estate. They were 8 years older. You put all that on top of each other. Yeah.
I mean, there was that recent report in one of the science magazines where apparently there are 2 times where your body ages like literally decades within hours. And one of those ages is 44. Unfortunate for me. And the other time I think is 60 or something like that. So, so they probably already hit the 44 mark. So, they would have probably aged for that.
Yeah.
But I guess they basically call an ambulance, and he's being rushed to the hospital. And then, of course, because of his situation and being gone for eight years, the doctors want to do all kinds of tests on him. And so he is not a happy camper when he's told that he's got to stay there a couple of days.
Yeah, I actually will say that the movie at this point, all the way up until he gets on the spaceship, is excellent. I think the pacing is great. It definitely drives a lot of tension. And then, of course, we have the bad guys introduced, which are these NASA people. I'm not sure about NASA being the bad guys, but they definitely are here.
Well, it's the typical faceless government entity that really could they're more concerned about their
national security.
Yeah, they're not concerned about him at all. And
well, it's I guess it's better than doing it in present day NASA security. In present day national security, the kid would have been ferreted away and never been seen.
Oh yeah,
from again, or
he would have been disappeared
shut down just because they don't want anything to be infected. You know.
Well, that's because they have the Space Force now. You see, you got the space military.
Exactly.
But at least here, they at least maybe wanted to do some tests and whatnot. And
you got a cool NASA.
What happens at the hospital is when they connect those electrodes to his head and start to talk to him about what happened. His brain is actually transmitting like a different language and stuff straight to their computer printers, which is why when it printed out a massive model of the spaceship, it was sent straight to NASA, and NASA was like, "Where did this come from?" It came from a 12-year-old kid. Well, find him. Because apparently, while this was going on, they'd found a spaceship. The spaceship.
Yep.
Which when they found it, I thought it was kind of cool because he was like, "How are we going to transport this?" Oh, wait just a moment. Watch this, and he pushes on the ship, and it just kind of floats.
Well, it's floating, so it's not like it's got air brake. It's not Santa's sleigh after all.
Right.
Right.
Air.
So of course they have this spaceship that they're still trying to figure out because they can't. They have figured out that they cannot get into it with any of their equipment that they have. So at the moment that the blueprints of the ship shows up there, they don't think it's a coincidence. So they make sure they track down the kid. He's about to be released, and he convinces him. Okay, he gets down on his level, and he's like, "Okay, if you can just give us 2 days, 2 days, don't you want to figure out what happened?" Of course, he definitely wants to figure out what happened. So after a little bit of grudgingly, almost refusal, he commits to it. And then, of course, they bring him into a room, and I think this is when he meets. They actually give him all kinds of presents too. I thought that was actually kind of cool. I mean, me as a kid, 12 years old, I would have liked some of those toys.
Well, they were bribing him to try and basically get him to ignore the fact that he was basically a prisoner at their. So which he wasn't buying at the time. He was very suspicious.
Oh yeah. But he does end up meeting a young woman played by Sarah Jessica Parker,
Right.
who seems to befriend him, and she seems to like talking to him.
The heck
And
with that. Where was his Big Mac and fries?
I know, right? I was looking for that. They still have Big Macs, right?
I mean, I know for certain they had Big Macs and fries in 1986. They could have done that. And Coke.
Oh yeah.
Which Coke? Coke. I like that. Coke Zero. Diet Coke. Classic Coke. Coke. I didn't realize New Coke was still a thing back in '86, but I guess it was.
Well, I thought it was interesting that she came in to serve him with this robot called Ralph, which I'm trying to remember what the Ralph stood for. But
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Ralph seems kind of advanced for '86, but I've seen robots that do that. But the ones I've seen in the hospitals that do that.
for 1986, it wasn't bad. I mean, it drove around and serviced certain people, and evidently the people at NASA knew Ralph enough to every time it came by they could just ignore it, which is kind of why he was able to get out of that room and off the facility. But on his way to NASA, he kept hearing somebody speak to him. And it turns out that it was whatever was on that ship.
Or the schizophrenia.
Yeah,
It's
been
the yeah, it could have been the schizophrenia.
moving at the speed of light can do that to you.
Right? Which is apparently what he had done to slow his to evidently, if you move at the speed of light, evidently it's like 4 hours to our time period.
Well,
so they explained away how he was still 12 years old.
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, the planet or solar system or whatever it was 2.2 light years away, right?
Yeah.
And the ship can travel through time anyway, so
Right, although apparently it's not supposed to with humans.
Even though the ship's original report was it intended to return him back to his time and place originally of being picked up.
Right.
Yep.
And it's interesting that apparently only humans are that weak and no one else is.
Well, plot hole. Actually, up until this point, I thought that the movie was heading at a very good pace. It's just once he gets on the ship, the pacing to me felt weird. There were times where it was moving very slow, and then other times where it was moving so fast that it was hard to keep up. Like, wait, what? Because once they decided the plot moved basically, okay, now you're home, you're back in your own time. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there was I felt like they could have been balanced a little bit more. Maybe some of the slower parts sped up a little bit. Maybe the fast parts slowed down. Maybe find out if he, when he comes back, he uses his newfound stuff to talk to the girl that they kind of hinted at the beginning, which they didn't do anything at all with.
Right. She basically disappears. Yeah.
Well, they could have made the girl that was with them the girl he was sweet on.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I thought they were going at first.
But no.
Very true.
I mean, again, I'm not saying that the movie was bad by that means, but I feel like the movie could have been one that would be even better. Especially, I think it would hold up much better if the pacing was like solid all the way through. And I thought the pacing was really good at the beginning. So if it had kept up the same pacing that it was at up until this point, I think that it would have been. I think that the movie would have held up still today as a great film for even new watchers of this age.
Well, I definitely feel like this movie would benefit from a remastering. Because even on Blu-ray, from what I understand, it's still kind of a little scuzzy looking.
I wouldn't know. I have the DVD.
Well,
and Disney is done with the movie making business, so we'll have to rely on Sony if we're ever going to get another one.
yep. So, we do have him escaping from NASA and he's being talked to by a disembodied voice to come and help it or whatever it is, and he comes around the back of the ship and the steps appear. And he begins to climb them, and he gets inside the darn thing. And I don't know about you, but I do like the inside of the ship. Even though
beautiful set design. I agree.
Yeah.
Plane or whatnot, it did feel and look it did look like metal, of some sort. And the floor and walls of that thing looked like the same language that was showing up, that was coming out of his brain on the computers a little bit. I don't know if you saw that.
I mean, for those watching, if you are you watching this actually and not listening to it, you can see a picture of the inside of the ship as our background today.
Yep. So I
thought the inside of the ship was kind of neat looking too.
So whoever designed the inside side of it and the outside of it, I thought was pretty cool, and the way that it changed shape eventually once he got to the first, because once he got inside, then everybody started realizing that the kid wasn't around. David had left his room somehow. And actually, I believe it was someone on the monitors that had seen the steps down to the floor. So they realized something was going on. So they scrambled to get to where he was. And of course, that's when he... I loved the part where the seat just kind of rose and he just kind of fell backwards onto the chair, and then that's when the door, the little door opened up, and that's when you first saw what would eventually become Max, and he was like, "You are the Navigator." And he basically was trying to tell him, that he needs whatever's in his head in order to finish his mission, which is to take that information that he'd stuck in his brain and take it back to where and whence he came from. So. But he is basically telling him that he is the navigator, which means that he is the pilot of this ship, technically, sort of. And of course, the bad guys, which means NASA at this moment, are attempting to get closer to him. So he suggests that they close or take and retract the steps, and he tells them to go 20 miles from here. I thought that was kind of funny because all of a sudden they started rising up 20 miles up, and evidently that took them to outer space.
I thought that was funny too, because he said to take him 20 miles away, and he didn't specify it, so it just went droop.
Yeah, he could have been more precise.
But evidently, these next few moments were evidently him and the robot on board the ship were figuring out how. Well, I guess David was figuring out what the ship could do and how to get out of there now that he had already crossed the line and gone this far with this ship. And I guess the one thing that that eventually Max wanted was to get that information back from his head, and in order to barter him doing or getting that information, he was like, "Just take me back home," So what do you think about the ship? What do you think about his journey so far? What do y'all think about all that?
He does a good job. Actually, I think that Paul Reubens, a lot of people really don't give him a lot of credit for the fact that he can act when he wants to.
Right.
And it's not until he laughs really that you can pick out Paul Reubens as the ship computer. He does a really good job of doing the emotionless ship computer for that first part of the trip until he gets the navigation stuff from the guy's brain and then ends up absorbing part of his personality too. The weird dark part of his personality. But
Yeah.
Still, so it was kind of cool to see that and, have the introduction to the alien technology. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, because even he still has his straight personality when he opens up the one side of the wall of the ship and you see all of these other features that he has evidently come across at different planets, because evidently he's taken different creatures, including him as being human, for his research, and that's like his mission, to study all of these creatures and then put them take them back to their worlds when he's done with them. So, but I thought that it was really cool to have a creature that looks like it's a puppet, but it ended up being like a cute little, creature that was an orphan. I forget exactly what it was called too, but it ends up being a character along the way, even if it does get squished a little bit.
I felt like they underused it a little bit. It was kind of there, but it was almost forgotten about through most of the film.
Yeah, they definitely could have used it a little bit more. And I thought it was interesting to see some of those other creatures, including that big eyeball.
Does anybody think that the robot in this reminds you of of Jabba's robot sentry in Return of the Jedi, where it pops out of Jabba's palace? I don't know why, but I always think of that when I look at this.
Just a little bit. I could see that. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if, well, Star Wars, no. Was Star Wars Return of the Jedi still before 1986?
It was
Return
before.
of the Jedi was 83.
Yeah, it was before 86. Yeah.
Okay, so it's very possible that they could have taken the design of that particular robot and then just built on that. You know, I wouldn't be surprised that everybody borrowed something from somebody else, anyways. So
It's
Until
all
you're sued.
It's all been done before.
but
Mhm.
so while on the ship, him and the robot have conversations and dialogue between each other because there are things that he does not know, like what is privacy. Do not know privacy.
Yep.
What is laughter? And things of that nature. And I think he learned what laughter was before he had a personality. So,
Well, the laugh was indeed the first thing that identified it as Pee Wee Herman, essentially.
yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. I can't even do his laugh, but in any case, so yeah, I think he stops for a bathroom break, and then of course choppers are sent that way, set in his direction, and no matter where the ship goes, they are apparently tracking the ship wherever it goes.
It does lead to a pretty fun little clip where he's like, "Please take me somewhere they won't find me," and so they go deep under the ocean, and then he's like, he says something like, "You're not going to leak, do you?" or whatever, and he's like, "I don't leak, you do."
Well, yeah, because he had mentioned earlier that the whole reason why he had to stick all the information in his brain is because he leaked somehow.
Well, they
And
were trying to experiment with the holding capacity of the human brain, but then he got his information erased, and the only copy of the data was still in the kid's head. But he was worried that the kid was going to leak the material because the kid was leaking other things earlier.
Yeah.
which I think because he said that he leaked is maybe David cried.
Well, no, he took a pit stop. Like he had him stop so he could go use the bathroom. That's, I think, specifically what he was talking about. But it could have been that he was referring to other things too. But
he was definitely leaking in that way.
Yes.
And that was also why they prompted privacy discussion.
Right.
Yep. So,
which is bathroom.
Of course, they see, and then I think he asks him what he is, and he tells him this big long name, and he's like, you know what? I'll call you Max.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, there is a moment where he is that he does scan him for the information, and all it is just to scan up and down his face. And he was like, "That's it."
Well, he had him all worked up. He had him thinking, "Well, I don't know what this will do to you. I've never done it before." Yeah. I think you'll be fine.
And he's like, "That's it, Davey. Oh my God, I think I scanned more than I could take on."
Yeah. Well, he said, "I think I scanned more than just the data," or something like that. He definitely picked up a few things.
Yeah, because eventually they got into an argument, and he told him, "You know what? I bet you I could actually take us to my home faster than you can." All right, let's see you do it. or some, and I think
All
they
right, Navigator, navigate.
right.
Something like that.
Well, what was it that he insulted him by calling him? But I can't remember what the word was.
Geek.
Butthead, not
Geek.
butthead.
He called him a
Yes.
geek.
Geek,
Which
yes.
it definitely tells you a little something about the times, because nowadays that's not such an insult. But yeah,
Well, it depends. I mean, the geek is the carnival person who bites the chickens' heads off.
that is the old school. Like I said, that's a word that's gone through a number of things, but like I said, I don't think it's considered an insult to most people today, but it definitely was in the 80s.
Yeah, it definitely was, just like Dork was. Dork thinks he's going to drown,
Right.
things of that nature. But yeah, so they have an argument where he basically forces him to basically navigate because they're falling, and NASA is watching them fall, and they're like, pull up, and he's doing the hot cold. Max is doing the hot cold thing with him. Warmer, ice cold with him. Now you're getting it. So, and ultimately,
who doesn't like? I guess you could call it tough love.
Yes, indeed.
And eventually he gets these two things rising on either side of him as like controllers, as you can see in the picture. This is like that moment where he's arguing with him, and he's like, well, if I turn ever so this way, I go left. If I turn ever so this way, I go right. Well, you should definitely go left. And so he does.
He took a wrong turn and ends up in Tokyo.
Yeah.
As you do.
Which NASA is like, well, where the hell are they going?
Well, that's because he doesn't understand the navigation. That's because the ship lost the ability to understand where he was going.
Well, I think it's because he was having so much fun with.
Look, it's Miami. No, that's Tokyo. Common mistake. Brandon, that's like your level of navigation there. Maybe even worse.
Of course, they stop and ask for directions from some people in a convertible car. And I guess there was some kind of music playing. I don't even know what music was playing, but it was some weird experimental crap that evidently was at that point in time. And Max was like, "Hey, Davey, are those geeks?" Yeah, man, those were geeks. But they evidently ran away from them because they didn't know what the fuck to think.
All right.
But what did you think of those characters? Were they dumb or stupid? Typical 80s characters.
Yeah. I mean, if you were just riding down the highway and all of a sudden a flying saucer comes out and a kid leans out and asks for directions.
This part of the whole thing, I feel like I say, this is what I had said was the issue with what I call the pacing issue. Because a lot of that stuff just kind of sits there and basically goes nowhere yet, and they're kind of just fooling around for a bit, and then right at the end they just zoom to the ending, which I feel like they could have done more with the interaction with NASA, created a little bit more with the tension, because NASA was chasing them, but nothing came of it.
I would say for a movie called Flight of the Navigator, the flight is a relatively small part of the film.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
I mean,
But of course, I think it's after they encounter that car full of folks that they see this big sign in Alligator City. This must be Florida, Max. And Max sees a big old dude, and that must be Big Al.
they end up taking 95 south, and he's like, "Oh, I think you should go on the parkway." Right. There you go. That was the navigating.
Right. I gotta remember. I'm trying to remember.
But yeah, he comes. He walks down. Asks the dude is just like dumbstruck at looking at the ship, and he asks him for some change to call his family, and he's still dumbstruck. And then of course a family that seems to be on a road trip comes along, and they want a picture beside it and whatnot.
Well, one of those roadside attractions, and it's like the father keeps trying to converse with Big Al about, like, well, how did you do that? And that's your best decoration by far. And Al's just dumbstruck.
Because it's not long after that they because NASA kind of stakes out at the parents' place and finds the girl who was sent to send the message. But there's really not much more to it, because he ends up just saying, you know what, I'm going to take the chance and then take the time travel back.
Right.
And then end of movie. He gets to see his parents again, but I feel like there could have been more to that.
Well, there is that one last little stinger, which actually I have very mixed feelings about, where you see that little critter that I have for my icon there. That little critter pops up out of his bag, and his brother sees him and goes, whoa, and then he just kind of pushes him back down in his bag, and then they go on and join their parents. It's like, okay, so you have an alien life form that you know nothing about, and you're going to try and keep it as a pet, while also the whole point of going home was so that you wouldn't catch the attention of the government.
In all fairness, it was the last of its kind, so,
Yeah.
But he probably just hastened its extinction, because, again, what are the odds that he would have suitable food here on Earth?
Oh, well, who would care about that,
Well, no, I mean, no one cares. That's the kind of movie this is. But I'm just saying, like, it didn't feel right. But anyway.
I tend to like that ending where, like, he was able to keep a keepsake of like his.
Yeah, but a living thing is not a keepsake.
Yeah.
If he had kept some sort of moon rock or something, that'd be a little different. But
I mean,
better with him than where Max might have actually stuck him, because he doesn't realize that his home was destroyed by a comet, which at the time, was a sad thing to hear. But
yeah,
one thing we kind of skated over was the moment where they actually Max actually heard the music earlier, and he was like, "What is that? Oh, that's called music. Don't you have radio waves that we can find something?" And at first there was like some opera station that they came.
He's like, "No, that's not music."
And then of course there was something else that he put on. He was like, "Oh, turn that off!" It was some like Cuban thing.
Oh no, that was good stuff. But then they put on Beach Boys, "I Get Around," and I'm like, okay, I can't fault him for liking that.
Now that's music.
Exactly. So, and in fairness, in 1986, that absolutely would have been my reaction. That was one of my favorite songs at the time.
I mean, he was already talking about stuff, and I'll admit,
Right.
they did a good job of making the 80s look weird. Of course, I'm sorry, the 80s were weird. They were a very strange time.
Yeah.
So, you know, but it's kind of funny that they were able to poke fun of the 80s while in the 80s. But
I wanted the little critter. I wanted to give him a home.
Now, I will say that ending is perfect because of who the movie's made for. It's made for kids, and the kids would love that, like being able to take the alien with them as a pet and so on. The movie itself, like I say, the movie itself works fine as a kid's film.
Yeah.
The pacing is not an issue for a kid's film. Matter of fact, I think that kids, in a way, it works just as good because kids love that whole like screwing around and doing that stuff like that. They're not as interested in the whole plot aspect.
When you grow up and you become an adult, slowness of pace becomes more annoying.
Well, as an adult, you're like,
no, I can definitely sit through a movie with almost no plot if I'm enjoying it for other reasons. It just really depends. But
well, as a kid, you don't really need plot.
Right.
So to speak. I mean, fart jokes or whatnot usually are good enough. But, you know, as an adult, I usually, the pacing and the plot line needs to move at a decent pace. I don't mind a slow plot if it has a purpose to it.
Right.
And I don't mind no plot if the whole movie is no plot. Unless you're disaster movie, and fuck that.
Well, I mean, again, if it has other things to offer, if it's a character-driven film and you're enjoying spending time with the characters, then who cares about a plot? You know, it just really depends on how the movie's put together and what have you. And yeah, disaster movie, fuck that movie.
I think that's the reason why I did want more out of this movie's plot is that because the characters, I did have some investment. I was curious as to the plot line with the NASA villain and the girl that he got with there. I was hoping that there would be like something to further that along, and for it to just be kind of dropped there for the fact that, well, we'll just return you home to your time. Yes, it solved the issue. But I feel like the whole point of introducing him to her was, and anybody else in that movie was moot. To me, it just, I don't know. I mean, I felt like they did a lot of good investment in that early part of the movie, and it didn't pay off at the end. And that's where I feel like the movie does not hold up as an adult as well. I think that there's enough nostalgia in it for me that because I saw it as a kid, that I would still really enjoy this film. But I don't think that if you're an adult watching it for the first time, that it's as easy to hold up. But then again, you watched it for the first time as an adult, Jake. You could speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like, well, I kind of already did.
I'd be open for them to actually return to this movie if they ever could, to be honest. It's been enough time, you know.
I do miss this type of film. I mean, I think that, I was talking about the Explorers earlier on, but those types of films are things that were almost exclusive to the 80s. These kind of kids' exploration films like this. You don't see them as often these days. I think they kind of ended in the early 90s.
Well,
except for those who are trying to, hit nostalgia.
I feel like there are still kids go on into adventure films. The ones that were really heavy into aliens and spacecraft and stuff, maybe we don't see that as much anymore. And I can't say that I watch all of the films that come out that would fall into this category. So maybe a lot of them just go right by and I don't even notice. But I feel like they still make them.
I mean, there were some that I think tried to go on. Like there was one that was called but a lot of those were also set in the 80s. What was that movie that came out not too long ago? It was 8 millimeter, not 8 millimeter.
That's a different movie.
A very different film. What was the film? I mean, it was about aliens, about a bunch of kids who were
Super 8.
Super 8, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a good example of one that was trying to cash in on the nostalgia for this type of film.
Right. Well,
and
I mean, yes and no. From the way they told it, that was not cashing in on nostalgia so much as paying homage to a childhood. But there was an element of the.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder about that because of when they said it and all of that stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that was a J.J. Abrams product. I feel like I can trust him to say he's nostalgic for that kind of movie if you look at the kind of stuff he does, you know?
But I do think that this film did. I mean, I think that this film could have easily stood the test of time, and I think still is good for kids. But I think that this film could have hit the age barrier if they decided to even it out with the plot in the second half. Do a little bit less of the kind of like doing kind of joking around with the ship and concentrate more on the characters and the plot itself. Do a little bit more, make up a little bit more of a conflict between him and NASA, do a final confrontation, and then after the resolution, maybe return him home.
Right.
Or even leave it open-ended. Like they go back and then you're left wondering if he did make it back alive. I mean, you never know. I mean, Last Starfighter, the guy comes back to the trailer park and then he knows. Oh, by the way, spoilers for Last Starfighter if you haven't watched a film that's like 30 years old, over 30 years old. But you know, I mean, he comes back to the trailer park at the end and then kind of they take off into space. You don't know what's going to happen to him at the end of it all. He's trying to defend the universe.
Yeah, I don't know that Disney would have, even at this point in time, Disney ending a kid's film with that level of ambiguity would have been maybe a little much.
Or maybe he went back in time and ended up connecting to Midnight Madness, and he became a part of the scavenger hunt.
Well, I mean, it's the Paul Rubens connection.
Yeah, see, there you go. I think actually that would be a funny connection.
Maybe.
Midnight Madness, I think, is definitely more out of place for Disney than this one is, though.
Oh yeah, this is more. This felt, I would say, more like a Disney film. I would admit.
I do want to mention that the kid who plays Davy, his future did not go so well. If you actually look up what happened, he actually ended up like getting charged for being in possession of drugs, and also ended up robbing a bank.
Really?
Yeah. He actually talks about it in a documentary from 2017 called "Life After the Navigator." A lot, and he basically like screwed his own self, because not only was he arrested several times, I believe it was in 2016 he actually was caught robbing a bank of some sort, and went and had 2 years jail time or something like that. Hey. Definitely did not fare well as an adult. Like shortly after this is when his troubles first began. So that is why we never got anything more, I think, because of his. I mean, he was a Canadian actor. Once he went back to normal life, I don't think he had a very good lifestyle afterwards. So I did want to mention that because you know, it all happened afterwards, but still, it
You
was
see,
him.
you see, the time travel messes with your mind.
But I mean, I hate to speak ill of actors and what eventually happens, but Disney has a track record of siding with actors and directors that have gotten in trouble, at least in this time period of movies. May not have been directly linked to the Navigator movie, but you know, it did happen. So, other than that, did anyone else have anything else to add about film before we head into production?
Well, I would say real quick that that's probably not so much a Disney thing as it's sort of, I guess you could call it the child actor curse. Like, definitely some child actors have gone on to much bigger and better things, and not all of them have spun out of control into, yeah,
So,
a lot of them have. Yeah.
So in 2008, he was prosecuted for careless storage of a firearm and received 3 months probation. Then later that year, he was convicted for possession of a controlled substance for a purpose of trafficking and received a prison sentence of 6 months. Then in 2011, he was convicted of uttering threats and possessions of a weapon for a dangerous purpose and was jailed for 30 days. And then later that year, he was convicted of cashing forged bank checks. And then in October of 2011, he was fined for consuming liquor in a public place. Then in 2016, he was arrested in connection with the robbery of Scotia Bank in Sechelt, British Columbia, a few days earlier, than May 1st. On June 8th, 2016, he pleaded guilty to charges of robbing a bank, wearing a disguise to commit a crime, fleeing police, and dangerous driving. On August 31st, in 2016, he was sentenced to a custodial term of 2 years less a day, as well as 2 years of probation. And the conditions of which included attending counseling and residing in a treatment center for narcotics abuse. And then in 2018, production began on that documentary, as I said. And it's basically about Kramer's life after the Navigator. And it was released on November 20th on Blu-ray and select streaming providers. So,
you see, this could have all been prevented if they had actually followed the regular plot structure and resolved all of the issues in the film.
Indeed.
Right? But in any case, let us go into production. What did y'all think about production? Tammy, why don't you give us some thoughts on your thoughts on production here? You're muted, Tammy. Oh, well, let's go over to... are you there, Tammy?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about what you thought about the production, then.
I thought the production was great. It was... I mean, for its time, you know, it had all the electronics and the computers and the spaceship. You know, you didn't see a whole lot of the little aliens and stuff, but that was really cute too. Or you know, they did a good job on those. But I thought what they did as far as the technology was really cool for the production.
Okay. Is that pretty much it? Your thoughts on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. What were your thoughts on production?
It was pretty solid. I mean, I don't know that it, certainly by modern standards, I don't look at this and go, oh, that was so awesome. But by standards of the time, I think they did a good job with it. And the puppets were a little janky, but they were interesting looking. And that was a nice house. So yeah, overall they did good.
I love a vacation house like that.
What about you, Brandon? What were your thoughts on production?
I think for 86, the effects were quite nice. I really do think that the set design, especially of the interior of the ship, was really good. The CG, though, yes, not perfect, it holds up well enough to these days because it's basically the liquid metal look holds up best with CG anyway when it comes to old CG. So I was actually quite impressed with what they did with it. And again, quite enjoyable film. I would say that as far as effects go, I have no issues with effects.
Okay. I as well thought that I think for its time, I was actually impressed with the special effects. I know a lot of the way that the ship flew, that was probably CG. The way that it took and went a different shape at certain points, I thought that was cool. It kind of looked like one of those X-planes that you would have seen in like one of those like popular science magazines, and whatnot. Because I remember picking up magazines just for to look at some of those military planes that they would test out, you know. So, but yeah, I thought the inside of the looked pretty tech savvy. I like the fact that when he kept moving side to side, he was like, "Can't you do something about the seat?" And then these things came out on both sides to hold his butt in place. That was cool. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when his personality changed after the scan, that was fucking awesome. But yeah, I thought the house, both houses looked pretty cool. I do agree that there should have been a little bit more with the NASA instead of seeing them just watch what happens, have them like show up a little bit more to be more of a nuisance.
And to me, NASA stopped being an antagonist as soon as he got on the ship, because really, yeah, they messed with his parents, but what's the big deal? They can do anything they want. He's going back in time; it won't matter.
Right. So
we didn't technically know that at that point, but
if he'd have ever gotten to the ground and in a spot where police and the NASA could have gotten him, they would have never let him go.
Yeah, I know.
His life would have been over even before it began, and his parents wouldn't have been able to protect him. So I kind of agree with him going back in the ship and if not trying to go and do whatever. I don't know. I feel like the movie is just fine the way it is. I'm not sure I would change anything about it, to be honest. I enjoy it. I enjoy the humor the way it is, and honestly, I wish there had been more humor, because then we would have gotten more comedy from Ruben, which I didn't even know it was him at the time. So, maybe having him actually land in Tokyo and fuck around with the locals a little bit, or or have them go over to China and different areas that they plot, see different comical characters, be like, and then more people actually saying they've seen a flying saucer.
Right.
But
they certainly could have gone a number of different ways with that, newscasts or scenes of different military installations or whatever. If he had crossed over from Japan to China, you could bet the Chinese military would be freaking out.
Well, yeah, they'd probably be looking at up at the sky and saying Godzilla. No, just kidding.
Probably not. But anyway.
But in any case, alrighty. I guess let's talk about music. There's definitely a little bit of a soundtrack to this film.
Well, as we said, I have no complaints with their use of "I Get Around."
Let's see. Okay, so let's see. It's got "Lose Your Love," performed by Blanc Mange. "Count on Me."
That was they had a music video that was like his first experience with music video, and it happened to be Blanc Mange. And weird.
That's pretty suitably weird.
That was a weird ass video to start with.
Definitely. "Love Fire," which was performed by Bob Epsy and Mavis. "Trapped in My Mind." "Blame It on the Bossa Nova." "Walk While in My Blues," performed by Steve Tyrell. You're the One That I Want" was played in the background. And "I Get Around" by the Beach Boys. So what did you think about the soundtrack, Tammy?
I thought it was okay. I wish they would have played Twisted Sister instead of just talking about it. They mentioned it more than once, and it's like, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've never heard of her.
So would that have been your reaction to Twisted Sister in 1980? Was it 1980? No, 1979 or?
Notably, this also had a score by Alan Silvestri, but I didn't consider it to be as memorable as many of Silvestri's scores.
I actually loved the score.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind hearing that music. And Elvin Sylvester, what is he? Okay, so he's the composer of the Polar Express and Avengers Endgame and
Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, and
the first Avengers. So he worked with a bunch of Marvel films.
Well, he's also Bob Zemeckis' go-to composer generally. So
Ready Player One, he was the composer of. So the A-Team, Beowulf, Night at the Museum, Van Helsing, the movie, Identity, the movie. So yeah, he's definitely. And The Mummy Returns and Volcano. Definitely. Oh, and Eraser.
Good God, Volcano.
The Quick and the Dead. Blown Away. Yeah, definitely has a lot behind his repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like the music whenever you hear da 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 da. definitely sounded like it had some flute work in it to me, or at least some organ flute work in there. Sounded like flutes to me, but in any case, alrighty, let's go into favorite scenes and their favorite characters. Let's start with you, Brandon.
Let's see. Well, it's hard not to like the Pee Wee Herman robot. Favorite scene? I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of interesting scenes in this. I guess maybe when he was flying the ship, I thought was pretty cool. I mean, as a kid, I know I'd have loved that part.
Okay, is that it?
Yep.
I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure really about a favorite scene, but I think David the kid was my favorite character. But close behind is the cute little alien that becomes his little friend because he's so cute. I guess my favorite scene would be when the ship on the inside, when he owned what did he say? This is this is like something number 3, and he goes, well, what's the number 1? And the things come up inside the ship, and the chair he's sitting on and everything, and it all changes, and the ship changes and everything. I thought that when it does all that, like for the first time, and it takes off, I thought that was like really cool.
Okay.
So,
is that pretty much it then?
Yep.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. Favorite scenes and or favorite characters?
I'm not 100% sure who to say is my favorite character. I might go with the ship. But it's not a clear victory there. As far as favorite scenes, oh no. Let me back up. My favorite character is Big Al. And I think that scene may actually be my favorite scene. I think there were a few good scenes, and some of the interactions with the robot would be kind of with the ship are definitely interesting, but I think just the way that Al is just standing there stock still, mouth open, and everyone else is just going about their business. It was just kind of hilarious.
Okay. Is that pretty much it then?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay. I really do like that little creature that is kind of an orphan, but I do like Max, especially after he does the scan and adapts some of Davy's personality, especially since it seems like he remembers dialogue that Davy and his brother did, and like buttface or whatnot, but I think he became an interesting character after that personality change, and honestly, I think it did something better for his personality to have some kind of a sense of humor. And his interaction with Davy kind of made him a little bit more human instead of a more, straight arrow.
Right. It was more Pee Wee Herman, and less Good Morning, Dave.
Yeah. But favorite scene, I think I'm going to have to go with the scene where he was learning how to navigate and he kept telling him colder, colder, warm, warm, warm. And I do like that moment where they're singing to "I Get Around." That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are my some of my favorites. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, hopefully you ladies and gentlemen out there who have been listening have enjoyed our discussion on this movie. And if you have not seen the film, go and see it. It's a pleasure, and it's a testament to this time of '80s. I think that the film is held up. Maybe some of you don't, but definitely let us know down in the comments what you thought of either or. And on that note, I will. I think we will see if we can tell you a little bit about ourselves and what we do. So, Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel, another one with David, and talk about movies and check out new movies. And I have a collection on my own, so it's very interesting. I've seen a lot of movies that I would not have seen otherwise. Some good, some not so good, but it's still fun. It's fun to check them out and hear everybody's opinions and everything. And now that it's summer, well, not much left of it, but I go to car shows with my car.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Kodabuki Jake. I am the sometime co-host of SeptumSin versus the World YouTube channel. We talk about physical media, and sorry. Well, that's good as any. I keep very busy most of the time. Work full time, but also try to do 100 different things, and including a road trip yesterday, and so a little tired from that. But it was a worthwhile one, very fun. And I still try and make time to watch at least one movie a week so I can join these fine folks. And always fun to check out stuff that I had somehow missed or overlooked before. So glad I got to come on this one. You finally get it watched.
All righty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin, a SeptumSin versus the World. We like physical media here. Of course, if you really want to have some fun with physical media, you should definitely be checking out our Disney episodes. We did 7 of all the Disney related films in my collection. Actually, we really didn't even touch the surface if you're going to do all the Disney related stuff, but we did a pretty good showing. I think Jake could say we've covered a lot of them.
Yeah.
Of course, we've been up in our pickup ratio lately. I mean, we got a pickup video film that's going to be up soon. And we're going to of course, we're gearing up for the Versus Awards mainly. That's going to be our big thing. And most of our concentration up until the end of next month when it goes live. So if you want to support us, definitely keep your calendar straight for the 30th of September. At the end of this month, I'm hoping to get all the presenters there. We've got quite a number of cool presenters. We got Steve Rudzinski from Carousel Theme. We've got the great Joel Winecoop and Phil Herman on there. So quite a number of pretty cool names in this year, and we're hoping to have some fun acting talent with Dave, maybe Cody Tudor, and joining me and Jake when we start filming next month for the actual presentation.
Alrighty. And my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. But I do moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I do a lot of gameplay lately. But I do some pickups and pickup videos and some video reviews from time to time. But I also podcast on the channel as well on Sundays with my fiance and my good friend Forrest. So definitely catch us this next week as we continue onwards with the never-ending story too, to discuss that on the channel. So like, share, and subscribe. And why don't I give this back to Brandon, and he can tell us what movie we are going to be discussing next week.
Well, Tammy will be ending us this month with a little film called Something Wicked This Way Comes. I've never seen it, so I'm actually very much looking forward to it.
Okay. Well,
and since you have kitty cats, Brandon, you can always sit here and play around like we do when the cat's coming down the hallway. Oh, something furry this way comes.
Absolutely true with Rose.
But in any case, hopefully you can follow along with us and be with us next week as we say good night to you all. Thank you so much for coming, and we had a blast discussing this for you guys and for ourselves. So on that note, everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Navigator.